Bolt fam, that Eagles game looked like another tragic script we've seen 1,000 times. But something flipped in Los Angeles. You had a quarterback playing on the edge, a head coach treating a regular season win like a life moment, a defense flying around like it was a championship, and a veteran stepping into the hero role in overtime. Behind all that chaos, there's real impact on the playoff race and on locker room chemistry. You're not going to believe what we've got today. So sit back, smash that like button, and let's dive in, because this lightning bolt just woke up for real. If you had said before Monday Night Football that the Chargers were going to beat the Eagles despite turnovers, a leaky offensive line, and a quarterback playing with a fractured hand, most people would have called it delusion. But that's exactly what happened. And the center of all this has a name and a number: Justin Herbert. This wasn't a pretty game or a video game stat line. It was a franchise quarterback deciding he's going to drag a team forward in one of the most physical games of the season. Just days earlier, Herbert had a procedure on his left hand after getting hurt against the Raiders. There were real questions about whether he'd even be able to take a snap under center, noise behind the scenes about Trey Lance needing to step in, the staff mapping out a plan B. And even with all that, when the camera cut to the tunnel, there he was, chin strap, locked, serious stare, ready to walk into one of the nastiest trenches in the NFL. The price was brutal. With the offensive line getting worked again, Herbert hit 45 sacks on the season and took 7 just in this game. There was a strip sack, a pick on a play where his arm got hit, drives killed by pure pressure. On a lot of teams, that's the perfect recipe for a meltdown. But that's where the most underrated part of number 10 kicks in: his ability to take the hit, get up, and still find a way to steal yards. Even limited, Herbert ran the show with key scrambles, read the defense on read options, and finished as the team's leading rusher with 66 yards, saving drives that looked completely dead. Every time the protection collapsed, he found a way to slip out, move the chains, bleed the clock, and, most importantly, keep that Eagles defense on the field long enough to wear them down. And while part of the fan base was losing its mind with every hit he took, another part had this quiet certainty: if that guy is on the field, the Chargers always have a chance. No coincidence that after this win, the Athletics playoff simulator has the Bolts at around a 79% chance to make the postseason. That's not a guarantee, but it's the kind of game that changes the locker room narrative, confidence, and how the league looks at this beat-up yet dangerously alive offense. Inside that locker room, it was proof that this Harbaugh ball project has a leader under center willing to push his body to the limit to keep it alive. There are wins you break down calmly the next day. And there are wins that explode in your chest the second that final ball is caught. Monday night falls squarely in that second category. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't clean, but it was massive. And it wasn't just Herbert emptying the tank. Jim Harbaugh on the sideline lived the kind of win that changes how an entire project is viewed. At the podium, half joking, half serious, he put this victory in the same air as his wedding and the birth of his kids. For a guy who lives football the way he does, it makes sense. That kind of comment doesn't come because Harbaugh is trying to be theatrical. It comes because he knows exactly what was on the line. If the Chargers had lost this one, they'd be stuck in a dangerous mess with the Texans and Colts, all with the same record. The narrative flips instantly. Talented roster that can't win big games. The talking heads start asking if Harbaugh ball really works in the NFL. Instead, the opposite happened. This team didn't just win. It showed personality. It showed resilience. It showed that against an elite opponent, it can manage the clock, adjust on defense when it matters, and survive even when the offense doesn't hit full stride. Week by week, this group is looking less like a team that just sneaks into the playoffs and more like a group that can show up there as a real problem. The playoff impact is huge. With this win, the Chargers lock in a winning record and open up space in the wildcard race. Right now, they're a game up on the Texans and Colts and 3 games clear of the Chiefs, something that felt impossible a month ago. And the road the rest of the way does not forgive anybody. You've got Kansas City, Dallas, Houston, and Denver. 4 games that are going to stress everything: physical toughness, mentality, locker room chemistry, and execution in the red zone and on 3rd and long. That's exactly why Harbaugh's reaction was so intense. He knows that if this team had gotten blown out in prime time, the whole conversation this week would be, will they even win another game? Instead, the question now is completely different. Can the Chargers actually make a legit Super Bowl run? And when a roster starts to truly believe that, opponents feel it. While the fan base was still trying to catch its breath after that primetime war, another consequence started to take shape: the ripple effect this win had on the AFC playoff picture. This wasn't just an emotional high. It was a strategic move inside the conference that reroutes the Chargers' path to January football. And the wild part is all of this happened in a week where the Bolts knew they couldn't gain much ground at the very top of the division, with the Denver Broncos winning again to get to a ridiculous 11-2. What really matters is how the Chargers held firm in the race, clinging to that number 5 seed. The math helps, but the mindset matters more. When you look at the AFC landscape, there's basically zero margin for error. The Bills, Texans, and Colts are all knocking on the door, and one slip-up can shuffle the bracket. But the Chargers, even going up against the reigning NFC champs and dealing with an offense that still isn't flowing the way it should, did exactly what real playoff teams do. They finished a game that could have easily slipped away. And there's a detail in all this that changes everything: the tiebreaker. Even with the same record as Buffalo, the fact that Los Angeles is 7-2 in conference play keeps them in control of that number 5 spot. That matters because it directly affects the first-round matchup. A higher seed means you're more likely to avoid the Broncos, Patriots, or Jaguars right out of the gate and not walk straight into the teeth of a top 2 seed. It's the kind of edge that can decide who's still playing in January. Staying on pace at the top of the wild card race also means this week's game against the Chiefs just doubled in weight. Kansas City, sitting at 6-7, is desperate. A desperate team plays different. They take more risks, change tendencies, open up the playbook, and the Chargers know it. One Denver slip-up before that Week 18 rematch, and the AFC West conversation is fully back on the table. Bolt fam, you remember that moment when your heart almost jumped out of your chest? That split second where it felt like the same old script was about to play out again? This time, it didn't. Because right in the middle of the chaos, turnovers, insane pressure, an offense struggling to breathe, a veteran stepped up and flipped the story: Tony Jefferson. A guy a lot of people didn't even have circled as a centerpiece of this defense. But in overtime, he made the play that separates traumatic losses from season-defining wins. And the wildest part of this story isn't even the interception itself, as massive as it was. What really blew up online and lit up the Bolt fam was what Jefferson said right after the game. No script, no filter, just raw emotion from a guy who had just lived a huge moment. He dropped the line that instantly became a kind of emotional tattoo for this fan base: "We'll ride or die for number 10. He's literally the strongest-willed quarterback I've ever been around." That is real leadership. That's not some canned locker room quote to check a box. That's respect earned through hits, blood, sweat, and replays that hurt to watch. That's an entire roster looking at Herbert and thinking, if he can take all of that and keep getting up, we can handle anything. And it's not like there wasn't reason for that level of respect. Herbert, fresh off surgery on his left hand, took 7 sacks, got hit over and over, dealt with constant pass rush, lost a fumble, threw a pick, and still ran the ball 10 times. On a night that felt like a street fight, he led the team in rushing, converted improbable first downs, and kept the offense alive when it felt like there was no air left in the stadium. And he wasn't alone. Cam Hart getting a hand on that ball at the end, Jefferson snatching it out of the air, the defense picking off Jalen Hurts 4 times. All of it created the picture of a team that simply decided it was not going to lose, no matter how beat up they were or what the other sideline did. There's something special in that. Wins like this build identity. They build confidence. They plant that internal feeling of, nobody is knocking us over when we play with this kind of heart. And if the Chargers carry that version of themselves into the rest of the season, the whole conversation around this team changes. Bolt fam, just look at what went down on this Monday night. A quarterback pushing his body to the edge, a head coach treating a regular season win like a life milestone, a defense picking off one of the NFC's biggest stars 4 times, and a veteran sealing the game in overtime with a line that instantly turned into a locker room mantra. That changed the morale, it changed the standings, and it definitely changed how the league looks at the Los Angeles Chargers. Now the mission is to turn this shockwave into a streak, into identity, into full-on Harbaugh ball. Because the feeling right now is simple. Something flipped. So tell me, do you believe this was just the beginning of our Super Bowl run? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like, and if you're rolling with this team, make sure you're subscribed.